Hey there, let's talk about self-care.
Help yourself get back on your feet with these 5 self-care tips when you're feeling broken.
The very first thing is to take care of you. And I know we all go, yeah, whatever.
We're talking about self-care and my self-care routine, and we're just gonna pamper myself.
Okay.
That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing.
What's up, fam and cheese? It's your local lumberjack here, Kyle Inman, just dressed up in my plaid and my beard. We also have a special guest here, my friend and roommate, Matt Reecer. Everyone give it up for Matt! Yeah! Woo! There's applause going in the video, Matt. Do you hear it?
Well, yes,
there's posts.
Thank you all.
Yeah!
Yes,
yeah, Matt, woo!
Yes, I'm here. Hi.
I'm just gonna stare at Matt and expect him just to say things.
Yep, it's going to be 5 minutes of us sitting here. I don't really know what we're talking about, so.
All right, let's give it up for Matt. Today, we have a video topic that both Matt and I, were very excited to talk about. As you can see, this video is talking about self-care. So Matt, do you care for yourself at all? You big on care?
No, not at all. Just kidding.
Well, you better be careful.
Oh my gosh, I'm leaving.
We're going to be going over things like the general pros and cons of the whole self-care movement and how to interact with it as best we can. So that's generally why we are here today. And I guess to hop right into it, the first real question that I was going to ask both of us, Matt. What is your general perception and involvement in self-care where you're at right now?
Self-care, I would define as care of self.
It's a solid starting.
Okay, well here's an analogy. Many of us have been on airplanes, and there's always that announcement that if the cabin loses air pressure, there's a mask that will pop out of the ceiling. And there's always that phrase that they tell you, like, please put your mask on before you tend to somebody else. I think it just contributes to good mental health for a person, religious or not, to exercise self-care and to take some time just to make sure that you're doing okay. And you asked Kyle about my experience with it. Several years ago, after I graduated college, I was part of a seminary, and during our student orientation, one of the first presentations was on self-care, and it was making sure that in the midst of our studies, because grad school can be hard. I don't care what program you're in, I don't care what your workload is like. Grad school can be difficult at times. Exercise self-care. Take care of yourself. Make sure that your mental health is good. Make sure that you're physically doing well. Otherwise, you're going to have other issues that are going to kind of build on top of that, and that are going to lead to you not doing well in school, to you not having balance in your life.
Yeah, I think that's a really good place to start. I know we're actually a couple of generations apart, I think is how I attribute this. Well, not generations, that's not what I meant.
You're making me sound ancient. Thank you for
I know,
that.
yeah, literally.
I think it's worth clarifying. I'm 29 years old. Kyle is 22.
I mean, Matt's ancient, and I'm a little baby. All that to say, my start on the internet, since the start, I was really welcomed with this overwhelming wave of, it really was a wave in the truest sense. It was the self-care wave. It was this overwhelming presence of people saying, care for yourself first, and it really came off as forget about everything else around you. From that was my perception. From that, I am now in a different place. Like, I'm starting to see more of the pros. That's why I think it's really awesome that we both are coming together for this video, because I really started from this negative view of it that said, wow, people are really just trying to be selfish. Like, we're trying to give excuse to just focusing all day, every day on ourselves. And I do maintain there's a part of that there's still a little bit of truth to that. But that being said, I think coming from that place of pushback and total rejection of the idea, I'm now at a place where I'm more comfortable encouraging people into self-care, depending on where I see that they're at. So that initial starting point from there will transition into really trying to tackle the overall question that this video is asking, which is, when does self-care become selfish? The cons, really, so to speak, of self-care that I see, it's an overcorrection. It is a good thing for people to focus on self-care and to take that time and to put effort toward that and to focus on that, especially for people whose mental state is constantly attacking them. It's so needed. However, since this is the con section, you know there's a but coming. But if there's an overreaction, an overcorrection to where you just stay in your lane all the time, I mean, that is just as counterproductive, I think. Just as. Not only that, but I think the overhype of self-care can potentially be damaging, because while it does a lot to help the people at the bottom that are hurting, what it also does is give a free pass to those who are not in that struggle to kind of coast and overindulge and put themselves even more on a pedestal. And so the analogy that I would throw out is veer right is only a good set of directions if you're going into the ditch on the left. You know, if you're veering into the ditch on the right, veer right might not be a good set of instructions.
Right.
It's that overcorrection, you know, you want to, the point is health. The main con, the main thing that I always see is that free pass. It's that overcorrection is not the answer to the problem that we're seeking to solve.
Yeah, and so I think a good way of summing that up, rest is good, but resting too much becomes laziness, and I think that's probably my main concern with self-care. If we get into this cycle where we're not getting work done, where our days are filled with relaxing and just doing whatever we want to do, that's the issue. I don't think that the negative view of self-care is totally unfounded. I was telling Kyle earlier, there's an analogy that I think of, and that if we think of our lives as a cup, we've poured out so much that we have to go back under a faucet and be poured back into, and that's where self-care comes in. But if we stay under that faucet and we just constantly have water pouring down into us, it starts leaking out, and it just doesn't really serve anyone well. We have to be filled up, but then we have to leave the sink and we have to go and be poured out once more. The
last thing that I'd throw out is, like, just to add on as a con, is there's the common statement that is made when introduced with the self-care wave of, how can I love someone else when I can't even love myself? You know, I quoted that on Facebook a few times growing up. You know, I'm in that crowd. However, I think what I've continued to learn in life, and what's just more and more apparent the more that I go through life, is that the two are not necessarily mutually exclusive. You loving someone else does not necessarily take away from your love of yourself. In fact, I've seen quite the opposite portrayed in my life. Oftentimes, the more that I love others, the more that I give my life away, the more that I actually get it back. The more love that I'm actually shown, the more I'm able to love myself, because I have now that community of people that I've loved well. Now that that's the case, I have this community of people that are so ready and willing to show me that I'm loved in return. I think the important part to focus on is just that if we're so absorbed with ourselves, if we're so focused on intentionally loving ourselves only, then we get to this place where we miss out on actually loving ourselves by loving those around us. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Did you have anything else you want to add?
I don't know. I think I would say that self-care does not mean that I've stopped caring about everyone around me. And that's because I do need that time to recharge. I do need that time to kind of step back from everything. And then when I'm ready to get back into that period of work and busyness and whatever else I have, that's when I'll take care of that.
I think that almost addresses that there are like two different kinds of self-care. It's important to define what self-care means, I think, to an individual and to see where they're at with that. Because you could be talking about two completely different things, one being totally selfish, the other being so worthwhile. Speaking of worthwhile, let's go from the cons, the negative perceptions, the dangers of self-care, and let's transition into talking about what are some positives, whether it be through experience or through revelation that you've had, or even through the lives of others, where self-care is a positive and worthwhile thing, things to take away.
So the positive side of self-care, for one thing, I think for those of you who may be watching this who serve in ministry, taking a break from time to time prepares me for what's ahead. It allows me to recharge from the work that I've done. I think that self-care also prevents burnout. Taking a break every now and then is going to be beneficial regardless of whether or not we're in ministry, regardless of whether or not we're in school. Man, there was something funny I was going to say, but I forgot it. So, yeah. We'll just cut that entire part.
We'll get there eventually. It's helpful for me to bring people back into the equation that are outside of myself. It's important for me to take myself out of the picture. It just is. That's just a helpful way for me to look at it and acknowledge all the pros, the good things that come out of it. In other words, self-care goes a long way in helping you serve others. If you don't care for yourself, if you don't take that step, then the people around you are going to be put at a loss because you're not able. That time that you give out is never meant to be just 100% outside of yourself. At that point, you become so disembodied and so disconnected from what's really going on in your life. It's important to remember that you, the listener, and me, maybe message to myself, you're an important part of the equation. If you don't care for yourself the way that you would care for others, then you're really doing a disservice, not just to yourself, but to the equation around you, the beautiful thing that's going on around you. People can pour into you as much, and they can tell you the truth as much as you want, but if you do not receive that yourself, forget about it. There's just nothing that can be done. It's going to fall on bad soil, so to speak. To use a not biblical reference, it's going to suck. Yeah, you're not going to get anything from it.
Well put.
There's an enormous amount of gain that you can get, not just for yourself, but for those around you. So to start out, to transition into this last section, which is now we have the information, what would you have us do with it? So to give a definition on what self-care or rest or whatever looks like, I think me and Matt have a very similar answer. 3, 2, 1, Sabbath! And Sabbath, to get us going down the road of it, I'm going to make a part 2 just about Sabbath tips and tricks to get you started down the path thinking about what does that word mean. Basically, it's the original self-care day.
Yep.
It's been a thing for a long time, and I think it attributes to a big reason why we have the epidemic of people needing self-care. It's because we lost the idea of Sabbath.
Yeah, and I keep seeing these statistics about anxiety and depression rates among college students being higher than they ever have been in history. And I do think that that's partly caused by the fact that we've forgotten how to rest well. And I think in this next section, we want to talk about how to go about doing that. And I think that Kyle and I both have some advice that we want to offer you as to how to go about resting.
The way that I like to think of this question, the way that I have in the past is like, what would I tell myself in the past if I was encouraging myself to have self-care or go about self-care? I'd first encourage Sabbath, because I didn't really know what that meant. So that'd be numero uno. 2, I think I try to teach Kyle the value or the necessity of saying no to things. That's not becoming a no man. That's just becoming less of a yes man, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I would also bring back in one of my earlier points about like, look at what you not caring for yourself, not loving yourself is doing to those around you. Like, I was unable to serve those around me best because I would just get to that point and be like, I can't. I cannot. Last but not least, I think I'd tell them that it's important to remember that caring for yourself doesn't always just look like being a lazy slob the whole day. And I'll touch more on that in the part 2 of this video series, but I think a lot of times you'll see that the things that you attribute with self-care are not necessarily things that help you effectively care for yourself. So I think I'd encourage me and anyone else to write down a list of things that fill you up. And I think I'd go from there. I think I love myself a lot more, and I think there could have been a lot of internal and external conflict avoided.
Yeah, part of rest is asking myself, what gives me life? What do I enjoy doing? Yesterday I had a Sabbath because it was a Saturday. We're filming this on a Sunday. And writing is one of my hobbies. And so I spent a few hours just sitting down and doing that. I would have also told myself that, yeah, it is necessary. Regardless of whether or not you're associated with Christianity or anything like that, sometimes you do need to take that nap. Sometimes you do need to sit down and just eat a snack. That's the best thing at times that you're going to be able to do for yourself physically and spiritually and emotionally.
Instead of operating from a place where it's like, oh, I can't wait for my Sabbath to come up. I can't wait for my self-care day to come up. It's instead a place of overflow. Your Sabbath influences the way you interact throughout the week. So we're operating out of Sabbath instead of out of the week into Sabbath. Well, awesome. It's been so good talking about this topic. I hope you, the viewer, got as much out of it as Matt and I also did. Yeah, everyone give a big hand to Matt. Yeah! Go Matt! Woo! Yes! Everyone show Matt some self-care down in the comments.
Or don't. That's fine too.
Man, thank you so much for watching this video. Let us know if there's anything you want us to talk about, whether it be in part 2 or in a future video. Leave us a like, leave us a dislike, either one. Leave us a comment as long as it's civil. And until then, I will see you in the next video. Peace.
I've got snot coming out of my nose.
Nice. I love that.
Don't put that in the bloopers.